Earlier on, I mentioned the brothers that were active in Polish politics. I wondered if it had been the Tusks. A few people have texted in to remind me that no, it wasn't the Tusks, it was the Kaczynskis. It was Jaroslaw and Lech Kaczynski, one of whom was Prime Minister and the other of whom was President. Fascinating situation there. I think Lech Kaczynski, he died in an air crash in about 2010. Quite the tragedy, that. Let's move on. Argentina's players celebrated their victory over England last night with a banner saying the Falklands are Argentine. The Business and Trade Secretary, Peter Kyle, told Times Radio what he made of it.
When it comes to the Argentinians, I think the dignity with which our team acted, I think, is the perfect contrast, and really shows them for their own behaviour by contrast. And when it comes to the rest of it, FIFA need to really take the action that deserves to happen.
Cindy, special circle in rhetorical hell for bad winners, I always feel.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I just feel like, okay, so first of all, it was a banner that they took in the heat of the victory from the audience, as I understand it. It wasn't one that they'd prepared beforehand. And I just think, we don't need to be so offended by it, because they're not taking back the Falklands, even if they want to. So just kind of turn the other cheek, basically. I mean, they were doing it to taunt Britain, and they've succeeded. Yeah, but that's what makes it rude, isn't it? Matthew, football is rude.
So Matthew, you agree with them, don't you?
No, I don't. No. I have a plan for a 99-year lease of the Falklands to Britain. From Argentina, so they get sovereignty and we get continued possession and occupation of the islands. But that's another matter. No, I mean, poor darlings, they feel very strongly about it.
What reason have they got to? It's like a few rocks with nothing on it. It's 1,000 miles from Buenos Aires. Get over it.
How would we feel if the French tried to take the Channel Islands from us?
Well, they've got cities on them. There's a lot of people there. They've got major economies.
For instance, imagine that the match had been England versus Germany. There'd have been a lot of Second World War stuff coming from the Brits, wouldn't there, about the Germans? I laugh it off. I was in Buenos Aires not that long ago. All the buses say Las Malvinas son Argentinas on the side.
You're going to have to explain to me why they care so much. You really are, because I mean, it was never really part of Argentina. They didn't displace anyone to take it there. It's not even an anti-colonial point. They're all called things like Pablo, for God's sake. They're the colonialists. Yeah. What's the thing?
Well, explaining why they care so much is not to say they should care so much. Of course they shouldn't care. Of course it is ours, and of course we got to stand by the islanders there. But if you have a group of islands not that far off your own coast,
1,000 miles from Buenos Aires.
Yes, but how far is England? Another 7,000 or 8,000 miles. You probably do feel these things. I'm always surprised the French are not more upset about the Channel Islands than they seem to be.
Yeah, well, I guess they've got a lot of nicer bits, don't they? Why do you think we should give them back and lease them?
Because they're very expensive for us, and it's a running sore with a major country in South America with whom we should be friends, and there isn't any particular reason why we would want to own these islands except our sense of responsibility to the people who live there. There's no other reason, unless of course now the issue of the economic zone in the sea around and the possibility of oil and gas does complicate my plan.
Right, so then we should keep them.
Yes.
As a token, we give them back. But if it's actually going to cost us, hell no.
Well, we should have the revenues, at least. But on the other side of South America, off Chile, you have an island called Chiloé. And the Chileans, right back in the early 19th century, didn't want to be independent along with other South American countries, and wrote to our king to say they would like to remain part of Britain. And Canning, I think, was the Foreign Secretary at the time, had the good sense to say thanks very much, but it's a little bit impractical.
Let's move on. Keir Starmer is off to Ukraine for his final summit as PM today. He's expected to say that Britain's commitment to backing the country will continue under the new PM, Andy Burnham. Do you think the sort of relationship between Starmer and Zelensky and he might endure even after he's gone, like it did for Boris Johnson, who kept going back to see him?
I guess it depends on what Keir Starmer wants to do after leaving Downing Street. For Boris Johnson, that was being on a speaking circuit, and being with Zelensky obviously helps that. But I've heard rumours that Starmer wants to return to being a lawyer, that he doesn't want to stay in the House of Commons. I don't know if he would make killing on the speaking circuit like Boris Johnson does. He's not a natural orator in the same way. So I guess it depends, but at the same time, friendship with the Ukrainians is just such an amazing legacy to have, because it's a real war, it's a real moment of kind of, it feels like good versus evil, that successive prime ministers have found that friendship incredibly helpful for their legacy. And not to say that there's cynical reasons necessarily, but clearly it is incredibly, when you're struggling domestically, to say that you can support Ukraine is clearly a very, very good thing and inspiring thing to be able to do. So probably, but it depends on if he even cares about politics after this.
I think legacy is the key here. Boris Johnson didn't have many successes during his premiership, unless you count Brexit, but he did really well over Ukraine, and so much so that there are people being called Boris Johnson in Ukraine now. And equally, Keir Starmer has a mixed record as Prime Minister, but he did really well over Ukraine. And I think, especially when both of them might have been feeling a bit bruised, they want to remind people that they did something right.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Well, look, yesterday he faced Kemi Badenoch for the last time at PMQs. Tom Peck has sketched this brilliantly in the Times today. He writes, the House of Commons knows well how to put on a show that was knows well how to put on the show that was about to be required of it, which was to smile, to lacrimate, and then to wave off its latest victim. Such an insincere place, Matthew.
Oh, it's disgusting. It really is disgusting. I'm afraid it only reflects human nature. You'll see at any funeral people who are a thorn in the side of the deceased, weeping in the aisles and in the pews. It's we do it. I remember when Michael Heseltine put the knife into Margaret Thatcher. All the lacrimonious behaviour and she was so wonderful and all that kind of thing from people who couldn't stand her. It is disgusting, but I'm afraid I think we're looking at human beings rather than just the House of Commons.
Cindy?
But I think on the other end, we would want enemies to be gracious. Right? We would even want, back to your point about winning, Hugo, if you've won, then you should be at least gracious about it and give your defeated enemy some grace and some face with which to leave. It felt a bit like you're about to put this puppy down, let him have the nice last few days.
No, if I were to die and to be able to see from wherever I had gone,
never going to happen.
See people who'd been unpleasant and unkind to me saying nice things about me, it would be nauseating. Absolutely.
You would haunt them.
Yes, I would.
I sort of think it's one thing from Kemi Badenoch, she's fought him, she's seen him off. A lot of people thought for a long time she'd be gone before he was, indeed, and she made reference to that herself. And I think if she decides that she wants to rise above and seeing him off and be friendly, showing, frankly, I thought a mode that I had not hitherto suspected she even had, then fair play. But when it's like his own party, who are the ones who've thrown him out the window and jumped up and down on him when he landed on the ground, pretending they're sad about it, that is nauseating, Matthew, isn't it?
Yes, completely.
Yeah, no, I think so. You've written a lovely tribute in the Times, Matthew, to Anne Widdecombe. You write about her being a big hit with gay men.
Yes.
Now, you know what, I've heard this before. I remember somebody once telling me they'd had dinner with Anne Widdecombe, and
she had a coterie.
She sort of he said she twinkles like a page 3 girl, is what he said to me at the time. And she said to me, she was surrounded by 25 people, all of whom were gay young conservatives.
Yes.
And I said, did she know you were gay young conservatives? And he says, we're never sure.
Oh, she knew.
Yeah?
She knew, yes. And she loved it. I mean, she loved to be loved, and that's not a bad quality in somebody. And I think she was genuinely, personally, quite tolerant. I don't think she would have been horrid to people because they were gay or, because they'd got divorced or because they'd had an abortion when she didn't believe in those things. She was just personally a nice and companionable person. And as for the gays, we do love rather overblown women. We love pantomime dames. I mean, think of the old drag acts, and in some ways, Anne Widdecombe was almost like a drag act, and people like that.
I've always sort of struggled a little bit to try and understand the because how to put this without like sort of getting myself cancelled before the end of the sentence. It's dangerous on live radio. The status. The feelings towards Margaret Thatcher in the Conservative Party all along from everyone were always quite gay.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, they absolutely were. And I think unwittingly she played up to exactly those feelings. She loved it. She loved the giggles. She loved commanding the Commons and deepening her voice and handbag, that kind of thing. And she loved that we loved it.
Sorry, steal your role here. Why are gay men so obsessed with pantomime dames, Matthew? To do a bit of armchair sociology.
I've thought quite hard about this. It's because a pantomime dame is halfway between a woman and a mockery of a woman in some ways, and at the same time as kind of warming to the petticoats and the big bosom and all the rest. We are actually quite liking to giggle at femininity and think it's slightly ridiculous, and a pantomime dame is slightly ridiculous, and we quite like that.
I mean, with Widdecombe specifically, and I interviewed her a couple of times, and she was obviously a very impressive person, a very, very, very eloquent person. I didn't meet her to have ever been able to figure out whether I'd have liked her personally or not. Her beliefs, her policies were anti-gay. She voted against equal marriage.
Yep.
She would have believed, and I mean really believed, not just tokenistically believed, that gay men were going to hell. How do you square that with a friendship?
I don't know if she'd have believed that gay men were going to hell.
She had her beliefs, and they seemed to be heartfelt.
Well, yes, but she had like the Creed of the Church of England or the Catechism. She had a series of things that she had become famous for saying she believed. How deep they really went with her, I don't know.
But it didn't make it awkward.
No, not really. No, especially if you do belong to a minority that is either mocked or disliked, you develop an ability to like people who are nice to you, even though their opinions may not be nice to you.
I think that's so admirable, and it makes me feel sort of horrendously millennial, and I'm not one that I would struggle so much myself. It's something I admire enormously. People who can do that, I think, is something we should all sort of try to do. We've just had a message sent in. Let me see. This is from Fenton, who writes, I played Widow Twankey to Anne Widdecombe's Empress of China. And although I disagreed with almost everything she believed, she was great company, interested and interesting, and all-round good egg. If a terrible actress, which she fully admitted, and brought the whole company boxes of Houses of Parliament's chocolates. They were a bit out of date, says Fenton. What a lovely message. Thank you very much indeed. With the sort of the terrible passing of Anne Widdecombe and how fondly she's been remembered, this brings me a little bit on to my column today.
And I would strongly recommend Hugo Rifkind in the Times today.
Do you know, he might, I'm not sure. Since Anne Widdecombe's death, there's been a lot of conversation around the security of our politicians, and that's not all that my column is about today, but it starts with talk of growing up as a politician's kids in the 80s and 90s, and the police and the panic buttons, the security of security, all that involved, and the weirdness that all led to, some of which I will tell you about shortly. But Matthew, you were an MP during this time. What was the atmosphere? How safe did MPs feel? How visceral was the threat from the IRA after the Brighton bombing and stuff like that?
It was visceral, and we did feel that we might be targeted, but also we shared with all our fellow citizens the fear of being blown up somewhere. I remember where I lived in South London. There was a sort of bit of an Irish cell nearby, and I suspect it may have been there that the MI5 learnt that there was a list of 200 MPs who were, as it were, on the IRA list. And for some extraordinary reason, I was on it. I don't know why, because I was never a fervent unionist or anything like that, but I was. So we were all given instructions, and we were given exactly those strange mirrors, like giant ones that a dentist might have, yes, to look under our cars. And the poor old Derbyshire Constabulary were told they had to make a special effort to look after me. Well, what do you do? What they did was every 2 or 3 weeks, a police car would come and visit my house and see if I was all right. I was away on holiday, and a police car arrived, and my friends were having a sort of drag party. And one of them, with exaggerated lipstick and high heels, had got stuck in an area of marsh near the house and near the road. A police car arrived, its headlights picked out my friend in a dress and high heels, stuck in the mud, and everybody else having obviously a rare old time, rolled up the windows and drove straight off again. And that will have been right round the Derbyshire Constabulary, I'm sure.
Wow.
What they don't know is that I wasn't there. Honestly, I wasn't there.
And that's your story. That's your story, and you're sticking to it. The balance. I mean, look. Obviously, MPs face a different sort of threat today, and one of the things I write in the column is the threat now seems to be less sort of organised terrorism, less cells, less that kind of stuff, and more just, frankly, maniacs who can be inspired by rhetoric. The kind of sort of terrorist threat that Matthew's talking about that led to the sort of security my father had when he was in the cabinet, I guess is a bit before your time, Cindy. How does it seem to you looking back?
Back when there was terror,
and compared to now,
kind of unbelievable that sitting politicians could be assassinated, and that there could be bomb attacks like that. That really, of course, famously the party conference in Brighton. It is unbelievable. So often when we talk about political discourse now and the turmoil and how febrile everything is, I think we forget that actually only about 50 years ago it was so much worse and deadly worse. So that is always a good kind of context to have, I think. But I think you're right in the sense that the public is so much closer to politicians today, I think, in the digital age. You are putting so much more of yourself out there. There's so much more exposure to the media, both through social media and through interviews and so on, and pictures. It's very easy, as in the case of Anne Widdecombe. I think her house was on the media some days before she was murdered. That it's very easy to kind of feel exposed and be exposed to kind of random lunatics, I think. And in that sense, the danger has changed, but it's not lessened.
Well, because Matthew, you must have known people who were caught up in the Brighton bombing. You must have known Ian Gow. Who was
I was in the Grand Hotel 2 hours before and had left. Yeah.
So, I mean, the question of whether MPs are at more or less risk today, because I mean, I it's not like a top trumps thing, but I do sort of find myself really trying to figure it out, because the IRA wouldn't have the IRA or even Al Qaeda. The focus wouldn't have been as random. It wouldn't have led to people like Joe Cox, people like David Amos.
No, there's a huge difference between an organised army with a political aim using terrorism as a tactic, which was the IRA, and the knowledge that in a population of 67 million, there are going to be quite a few completely crazy people, and if they're going to start just randomly, it's just dreadful.
So, I mean, the secondary point I make in the column today, because columns, they can't just be anecdotes, they need a point, is that Reform has, since Anne Widdecombe was killed, as horrific as that was, Reform has turned this argument into an argument about how people saying incendiary, sort of critical things about MPs could lead to their MPs being attacked. And I agree with them. I'm just not sure they agree with themselves, because this is the party that spent the last 2 years telling us that the police shouldn't care about what people say, even if what they say is about setting fire to asylum hotels, and then it's sort of woke authoritarianism when they do. Do you find it notable that Reform has sort of seems to have, without even acknowledging it, utterly changed their position on this, or am I misunderstanding their position?
No. I think you're totally right, Hugo. You're a snowflake when it comes to threats to yourself, but never when it comes to abuse or threats at other people. I think, and you mentioned Zia Yusuf in your column, and what comes to mind is when he was on Question Time, I think earlier this year, and afterwards he posted on Twitter that all the cross-party panelists in the green room were very friendly with each other, and he posted that on Twitter in like a kind kind of viral post as if that was a bad thing. You know, look at how chummy these mainstream politicians are behind the scenes. But actually, you know, you need to be friends with your enemies. You need to know that even if they believe different things, that they're not kind of beyond the pale.
So they're not monsters.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so I think he himself takes a very kind of combative view to this that maybe other people in Reform don't necessarily do. But I think that is quite hypocritical from him, actually.
What do you think, Matthew?
I think it is a truth about human nature and not just Reform, that nasty people don't like people being nasty to them, though they may be nasty to others. I think that's just truth. I've some sympathy with Reform. I mean, not politically, but there is a bit of a pylon at the moment, and they must feel exposed to a bit of a pylon. And I'm not surprised that their language gets a bit edgy and a bit angry sometimes.
But when people are exposed to a pylon, it seems to me they begin to understand the need for moderation of language. They begin to understand the need perhaps for the police to take an interest in even very mild threats that people make on the internet because of what they can lead to.
But this is a truth about politicians generally, not just Reform. They are a remarkably unself-knowing breed, and they seem to have a strange inability to see themselves as others see them.
Well, I mean, I think we all do to some degree, but yes politicians all the more so. Look, while I've got you, and I know we haven't got much time left, earlier this week, Kemi Badenoch removed the whip from Lord Barwell, Gavin Barwell, who was Chief of Staff under Theresa May. This comes after reports that she's launched a purging of the Tory Wets campaign. Matthew, you say come off at Kemi Badenoch, and you say you might have to rejoin the Tories in order to resign in protest.
Yes, Gavin Barwell is a Conservative to his very core, and what she doesn't like about him is he's part of a group called Prosper, I think, who she sees as a threat from within the Conservative Party to her centre-right position. I don't think it is, and I think she would have done much better to hug it close than to see them all as enemies, but she's seen him as an enemy, and the idea that anybody who wants to be a candidate now has to go through a sort of Spanish Inquisition and attach their names and signatures to different party positions. Fudge it. It's always best to fudge things. We always fudge things. It was always thought that if you wanted to be a Tory candidate, you sort of more or less agreed with the manifesto, but you didn't have to agree point by point. And this Spanish Inquisition approach, it's so brittle, and she's doing so well in other ways that it grieves me.
When are you rejoining then, in order to resign?
They probably wouldn't have me.
Any day. We've got mere seconds left, Cindy, but last word to you on the Gavin Barwell.
Well, I just think it feels authoritarian to purge someone for holding views that your party was kind of identified with just a few years ago.
Yes.
You know, that feels bizarre, the turnover of opinions, because that wheel is constantly spinning, and when does it become, you know, it's just bizarre to purge someone for the established position of your party from a few years ago.
Well, Cindy, thank you very much indeed. Matthew Parris, thank you very much indeed. And look, if you do rejoin the Conservative Party and you wish to resign publicly on air, do come back and do it with us. Thank you very much indeed both. I've been Hugo Rifkind.